"If you tease me again with that look," Mafia boss warned. She thought he was just another hot guest. The rain in Graybridge did not fall gently. It hammered against the glass walls of the Harbor Line Hotel like a fist demanding entry. Inside, the air smelled of expensive white lilies and lemon polish, a scent designed to make people forget that outside the streets were flooded and the city was angry. Maya Nguyen stood behind the marble front desk, her posture perfect despite the ache radiating from the arches of her feet up to her calves. It was 11 at night. She had been standing here for 9 hours, and she had at least 3 more to go before she could trade the pristine uniform for sweatpants and a bus ride home. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a vibration against her hip that made her flinch. She knew who it was without looking. It was her mother. It was always her mother at this hour, awake with worry, counting pennies in a notebook that never seemed to balance. Maya ignored the call, a spike of guilt piercing her chest. She could not have the conversation about the rent increase right now. She could not listen to her mother ask, for the 3rd time this week, if she had met a nice doctor or lawyer at the hotel yet. The rent for their 2-bedroom apartment had gone up by $200, and Maya was already picking up extra shifts just to keep the lights on. She looked around the lobby. It was empty, save for the night porter polishing the brass railings near the elevators. The chandeliers overhead cast a warm, golden glow that reflected off the wet pavement outnet. It was a beautiful cage. This hotel. Maya pulled a small, battered sketchbook from beneath the counter. It was her one rebellion. On the page, jagged lines of charcoal formed the rough concept of a living room, open and airy, with light flooding in from imaginary windows. It was a design for a loft she would likely never own, filled with furniture she could definitely not afford. She shaded the corner of a sofa, losing herself in the friction of the charcoal against the paper. Outside, headlights cut through the storm. A black SUV pulled up to the curb, tires slicing through the standing water. It was not a taxi or a rideshare. It was a heavy, armored vehicle that looked out of place among the sleek sports cars that usually idled in the valet circle. Maya slid the sketchbook out of sight and straightened her blazer. She tapped the keyboard to wake her terminal, her mask of professional hospitality sliding back into place. The automatic doors parted. A gust of cold, damp wind rushed in, carrying the smell of ozone and exhaust. A man stepped inside. He was tall. That was the first thing Maya noticed. He was tall enough that he had to duck slightly to close his umbrella, shaking the water off with a sharp, decisive snap. He wore a suit that was blacker than the night outside, tailored so perfectly it moved with him like a second skin. It was not the flashy designer wear she saw in the tech moguls who stayed here. This was bespoke. This was serious. 2 other men entered behind him. They were broader, their faces hard and unreadable. They did not look at the architecture or the chandeliers. They looked at the corners of the room. They looked at the porter. Then they stopped, hanging back near the entrance like statues, while the first man walked toward the desk. Maya watched him approach. He moved with a predatory grace, his steps silent on the marble. He wore an expensive watch, the silver glinting under the lights, but he wore no jewelry. His dark hair was brushed back, revealing a face that was striking not because it was pretty, but because it was severe. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that were currently scanning the lobby with the precision of a security camera. When his gaze landed on her, Maya felt a physical weight settle on her shoulders. He did not look at her like a guest looks at a receptionist. He looked at her like he was assessing a potential threat, or perhaps a prize. He stopped at the counter, up close. He smelled of rain, cedar, and something sharp, like expensive scotch. "Good evening," Maya said, her voice steady. "Welcome to the Harbor Line." He looked at her for a long second before speaking. "Good evening." His voice was a deep baritone, rough around the edges, like velvet dragged over gravel. He placed a black credit card on the marble. There was no name on the front, just a sleek, matte finish. "Checking in," he said. "The name is Daniel Reed." Maya picked up the card. It was heavy, made of metal. "Do you have a reservation, Mr. Reed?" "I believe so." he said. She typed the name into the system. Her fingers flew across the keys, grateful for the routine. Yes, I see it here. A reservation for 3 nights. A king suite. She looked up. He was watching her hands. We have you in one of our standard suites on the 10th floor, Maya said. She hesitated. The hotel was underbooked due to the storm. She had the authority to upgrade guests if she felt it would improve their experience, or if they seemed important. This man seemed important in a way that had nothing to do with fame. However, since the weather is so terrible, I can move you to a corner suite on the top floor. It has a better view of the city lights against the rain. One corner of his mouth quirked upward. It was not quite a smile. It was a smirk, small and knowing. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the high counter, encroaching on her space just enough to make her heart skip a beat. That is very generous of you, he said softly. It is standard policy for our valued guests. Maya lied smoothly, though her pulse had quickened. She reached out to take his identification card, which he had placed next to the credit card. As her fingers grasped the plastic ID, her hand brushed against his. His skin was warm, a shocking contrast to the cold rain he had just walked through. Maya felt a jolt go up her arm, a sudden, static zap that made her fingers twitch. She pulled her hand back a fraction of an inch too fast. He did not pull back. He kept his hand there on the marble, his eyes dropping to her mouth. For a second, the air between them felt thin, charged with oxygen and electricity. You have cold hands, he observed. The air conditioning is strong in the lobby, Maya said, her voice sounding breathless to her own ears. She cleared her throat and looked down at his ID. The photo matched. The name read Daniel Reed. It looked real enough, but Maya had checked in thousands of people. She knew when a man did not match his name. Daniel Reed sounded like an accountant from Ohio. This man looked like he toppled governments before breakfast. We are lucky to have someone like you working the night shift, he murmured. The compliment was standard, but the delivery was not. It was low and intimate, as if he were sharing a secret. Maya felt a flush rise up her neck. She turned back to her computer to encode his room key. I enjoy the quiet, she said, keeping her eyes on the screen. The system lagged. The little loading circle spun round and round on the monitor. Come on, she whispered to the machine. Dante, though she knew him only as Daniel, leaned further over the counter. He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark irises. He was studying her face, reading the exhaustion in the fine lines around her eyes, the tension in her jaw. You look tired, he said. It was not an insult. It sounded almost protective. Maya looked up, surprised by his candor. She met his gaze. It has been a long week. Mr. Reed. He held her gaze. The silence stretched, heavy and thick. She should look away. She should apologize for the delay, but she didn't. She found herself caught in the gravity of his presence, staring back at him with a mix of curiosity and defiance. She was too tired to be submissive, too intrigued to be professional. She gave him a look, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a tiny tilt of the chin that said she saw him, really saw him, and she wasn't intimidated. His eyes darkened, the smirk returned, but this time it was dangerous. If you tease me again with that look, he said, his voice dropping to a rumble that vibrated in her chest. I might forget I am just a guest. The words hung in the air. Maya's cheeks burned. The heat flooded her face instantly. It was such a bold, audacious thing to say. A tease? Her? She was standing here in a stiff polyester blazer trying to pay her mother's rent, and this man was talking to her like they were lovers in a dimly lit bar. The computer beeped, signaling the key was ready. Maya broke the contact, her heart thudding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She laughed, a short, breathless sound that she hoped sounded professional. Here is your key, Mr. Reed, she said, sliding the plastic card across the marble. Top floor. The elevator is to your right. He picked up the key. He did not break eye contact. Thank you, Maya. He said her name like he was tasting it. He had read it off her name tag, of course. But hearing it in his voice made her stomach do a strange, pleasant flip. He straightened up, buttoning his suit jacket with one fluid motion. He turned and signaled to his men with a barely perceptible nod. The two statues by the door came to life and moved toward the elevators. Maya watched him walk away. He moved with a powerful, confident stride. As he reached the elevator bank, she saw one of the men, the broader one with a scar on his neck, stop. He did not get on the elevator immediately. Instead, he turned and scanned the corridor, his eyes sweeping over the empty lobby, the entrance, and finally, the front desk. He stared at Maya for a chilling second before stepping into the elevator. The doors closed. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. She slumped slightly against the counter. Just a rich flirt, she whispered to herself. Just another rich guy with an ego. But her hands were trembling slightly as she picked up her pen. It wasn't fear. It was something else. She felt unsettled, like the air pressure in the room had changed. She felt seen. For years, she had been part of the furniture at the harbor line, a smiling mannequin who handed out keys and directions. He had looked at her and seen the woman beneath the uniform. She tried to go back to her sketch, but the charcoal lines looked messy now. An hour passed. The rain continued to lash the city. Maya was restocking the brochure stand when the automatic doors opened again. This time, it was not a mysterious dark figure. It was a young man in a loud, patterned designer hoodie, dragging a suitcase that cost more than Maya's car. He was on his phone, speaking loudly. "I don't care what time it is. Bro, I need the penthouse," the man shouted into his phone. He hung up and marched to the desk. Maya moved back behind the counter. "Good evening, sir. How can I help you?" "I have a reservation. Sterling, give me the penthouse," he demanded, not looking up from his phone screen. "I have your reservation here, Mr. Sterling," Maya said politely. "However, you booked a standard king room. The penthouses are currently occupied or undergoing maintenance." The man looked up, his face twisting into a sneer. "Do you know who I am? I have 3 million followers. I can ruin this place with one tweet. Get me a manager." "I am the supervisor on duty," Maya said, keeping her voice calm. "I cannot give you a room that is not available." "Then kick someone out," he shouted, slamming his hand on the marble. The sound echoed through the quiet lobby. "This is ridiculous. You are useless. I want the penthouse, and I want it for free for the inconvenience." Maya took a deep breath. She was too exhausted for this. "Sir, please lower your voice. You are disturbing." "I will scream if I want to," the man yelled, leaning over the counter, his spit flying. "You are just a receptionist. Do your job. I believe the lady asked you to lower your voice." The voice came from the shadows near the bar entrance. It was calm, low, and terrifyingly cold. Maya looked up. Dante was standing there. He had changed out of his wet coat. Now he wore a crisp white shirt, the top button undone, and dark trousers. He stood with his hands in his pockets, leaning casually against a pillar, but his eyes were fixed on Mr. Sterling with zero warmth. The influencer turned around, ready to fight, but he faltered when he saw Dante. There was a quality of violence in Dante's stillness that triggered primal instincts in weaker men. "Mind your business, old man," the influencer muttered. Though his voice lacked conviction, Dante pushed off the pillar and walked toward the desk. He did not rush. He moved with that same measured, lethal grace. He stopped 3 feet from the influencer. He was half a head taller. "You are shouting at a woman who is doing her job." His tone was conversational, which made it worse. "And you are ruining my evening. I came down for a drink, not to hear a child throw a tantrum. I'm a VIP, the influencer stammered. Dante looked him up and down with withering disdain. "You are a nuisance. Take the key she gives you, or leave. If I hear your voice again, I will have you removed, and I will not be gentle about it." The influencer looked at Dante, then at Maya, then back at Dante. He swallowed hard. The bravado evaporated. He snatched the key card from the counter without a word and hurried toward the elevators. Dragging his suitcase with a clatter, silence returned to the lobby. Maya let out a shaky sigh. She looked at Dante. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." Dante turned to her. The coldness vanished from his eyes, replaced by that simmering warmth from earlier. He stepped closer to the desk again. He was loud, Dante said simply, "and I do not like men who use their volume to intimidate women. I can handle myself," Maya said, lifting her chin. "I know you can," Dante said. "I saw the fire in your eyes, but everyone needs backup sometimes." He looked at her for a moment longer, his gaze tracing the line of her jaw. "Try to get some rest. Maya, you still look tired." "I have 3 hours left," she said. "Then I will let you work," he said. "Good night." He turned and walked back toward the bar, presumably to find that drink. Maya watched him go. She felt a strange sensation in her chest, a mixture of relief and a tight, coiling tension. She felt protected. Yes. But she also felt unnerved, the way he had shut down that man. It was too easy. It was the authority of a man who was used to being obeyed instantly. Later that night, Maya sat in the staff break room. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. She stared at her cold cup of coffee. She replayed the moment at the desk over and over. "If you tease me again with that look." She brought a hand up to her cheek. It felt hot. Who was Daniel Reed? Why did he travel with security guards who looked like soldiers? And why? Out of all the people in this city, did he look at her like she was the only water in a desert? She knew she should be careful. Her mother had warned her about men like this, rich, powerful men who treated girls like Maya as disposable entertainment. But when she closed her eyes, she didn't feel fear. She felt a flutter in her stomach, a dangerous, traitorous spark of attraction. She wanted to know what would happen if she gave him that look again. She took a sip of the cold coffee and grimaced. "Curiosity killed the cat," she whispered to the empty room. But as she checked her watch and prepared to go back out to the lobby, she knew she was already too curious to look away. 3 days had passed since the storm, and Daniel Reed was still at the Harbor Line Hotel. By all accounts, the weather had cleared enough for business travel to resume, yet the mysterious guest in the corner suite showed no signs of checking out. In fact, he seemed to be making the lobby his second office. Maya saw him everywhere. When she started her shift at 4 in the afternoon, he would be sitting in the lounge with a tablet, drinking espresso black. When she crossed the lobby to deliver messages, he would happen to be walking toward the elevators. It became a rhythm, a dance she had not agreed to join but found herself stepping into regardless. He asked her questions that had nothing to do with hotel amenities. "Where is the best place to get a real coffee in this city?" he asked on Tuesday. "Not this hotel mud." "There is a small roaster on 4th Street, Maya answered, keeping her eyes on her monitor. "It is called the Daily Grind. It is cheap and strong." 4th Street, he repeated, testing the name. "I will try it. Thank you, Maya." On Wednesday, he stopped by to ask about the architecture of the old library down the block. On Thursday, he simply leaned against the counter and asked how a woman with eyes that sharp ended up working the graveyard shift at a hotel that catered to people with more money than manners. He was weaving himself into the fabric of her nights. Maya tried to maintain her professional distance. She was good at it. She had practiced the art of being polite, but unreachable for years. It was a survival mechanism in the service industry, but with Daniel, the wall she built kept developing cracks. He did not look at her uniform. He looked at her. He noticed when she was tired. He noticed when she was hiding a limp from standing too long. It was Friday night when the barrier truly began to crumble. It was late, past 1 in the morning. The lobby was silent, the air conditioning humming a low, steady note. Maya was restocking the brochure stand near the concierge desk, her back to the entrance. She was tired. Her student loan payment was due in 2 days, and her bank account was hovering dangerously close to zero. She had spent the last hour doing mental math that always ended in a negative number. "You take those brochures very seriously," a deep voice said behind her. Maya jumped, nearly dropping a stack of maps. She turned to find him standing there. He looked different tonight. Usually, he was buttoned up, armored in his expensive suits. Tonight, his tie was undone, hanging loose around his neck. The top 2 buttons of his white shirt were open, revealing the hollow of his throat. His jacket was slung over one shoulder, held by a single finger. He looked like a man who had just finished a war, or perhaps started one. "Mr. Reed," Maya said, her heart doing that traitorous little skip it always did when he appeared. "I did not hear you approach. I have been told I walk quietly," he said. He moved closer, dropping his jacket onto a nearby velvet chair before leaning his hip against the polished wood of the brochure stand. He was too close. The scent of him, smoke, rain, and something warm and masculine, invaded her personal space. "You are working late again," he observed, his eyes scanning her face. "Do you ever go home?" "I go home when the work is done," Maya said, slotting the last of the maps into the rack. "Some of us have bills that do not pay themselves." "Is the hotel industry your passion, then?" he asked. There was a teasing glint in his eyes, but his voice was soft. Maya let out a short, dry laugh before she could stop herself. "My passion? No. This pays the rent, barely. So what is the passion?" he pressed. "If money were no object, where would you be right now?" Maya hesitated. She rarely talked about her real life with guests. It was against the rules, and frankly, none of them usually cared. But the lobby was empty, and the way he was looking at her, with genuine, unhurried interest, made the words spill out. "I would have a studio," she said quietly. "A small one. High ceilings, lots of natural light. I would paint all day and not have to worry about smiling at people who snap their fingers at me." "An artist," he mused. He did not laugh. He did not make a condescending comment about it being a nice hobby. He nodded slowly. "I can see that. You notice details other people miss." "It is just a dream," Maya said, feeling suddenly exposed. "Between student loans and the cost of living in Graybridge, I will probably be stocking brochures until I am 80. Debts can be paid," he said, his voice dropping an octave, "and dreams are only impossible if you stop chasing them." He pushed off the stand and took a step toward her. Maya froze. He reached out, his hand moving slowly, clearly giving her time to pull away. She didn't. He took her right hand in his. His palm was large, rougher than she expected for a man in a suit. It was warm and dry. He turned her hand over, his thumb brushing against the side of her index finger. "You have ink here," he murmured. Maya looked down. There was indeed a smudge of black charcoal on her knuckle from where she had been sketching on her break earlier. She had scrubbed her hands, but the cheap charcoal was stubborn. I must have missed a spot," she stammered. "I like it," he said. He did not let go. His thumb rubbed gently over the smudge, a rhythmic, hypnotic motion. "It shows you are working on something that matters to you." Maya stopped breathing. The sensation of his skin against hers was electric. It wasn't just a touch. It felt like a conversation. His thumb grazed the sensitive skin between her fingers, and a shiver raced up her arm, settling heavy and hot in her stomach. She looked up at him. He was watching her. His dark eyes dilated. The air between them seemed to thicken, turning into something viscous and sweet. He was not looking at her hand anymore. He was looking at her mouth. "Maya," he whispered. The sound of her name on his lips felt like a caress. She found herself leaning in, just a fraction of an inch, drawn by the gravity of him. "Miss Nguyen," the sharp voice shattered the moment like glass. Maya snatched her hand back as if she had been burned. She spun around to see Mr. Henderson, the night manager, standing by the elevator bank. He was a small, petty man with a mustache that twitched when he was angry. Right now, it was twitching violently. "Mr. Henderson," Maya said, her voice shaking slightly. The manager marched over, ignoring Dante completely. "What do you think you are doing? I have told you a dozen times about fraternizing with the guests. You are here to work, not to flirt. This is a 5-star establishment, not a singles bar." Shame flooded Maya's face. She opened her mouth to apologize, to explain, but the words stuck in her throat. She was not flirting. The voice was ice cold. "Mister." Henderson stopped mid-rant and looked at Dante. For the first time, he seemed to realize who was standing there. Dante had straightened to his full height. The relaxed, teasing demeanor was gone. In its place was a stillness that was terrified. He looked down at the manager with an expression of absolute, crushing boredom. "I beg your pardon, sir." "Mr. Henderson squeaked. "I said, Dante enunciated, his voice low and devoid of emotion. She was not flirting. I was detaining her with questions about the city. She was attempting to return to her duties, and I was preventing her. If you have an issue with that, you can take it up with me. Of course, sir, the manager stammered, shrinking under Dante's gaze. We have strict policies. Your policy is to ensure your guests are happy, Dante said. He took a step toward the manager. It was a small step, but it forced the other man to retreat. I am a guest, and I am currently very unhappy with your tone. Miss Nguyen is the most competent employee I have encountered in this entire building. You should be thanking her, not berating her. Mr. Henderson paled. Yes, sir. My apologies, sir. And to you, Miss Nguyen. Go away, Dante said calmly. The manager nodded frantically and scurried back toward his office, closing the door with a click. Maya let out a breath, her knees feeling weak. She looked at Dante. He was still watching the office door, his jaw set in a hard line. For a second, she saw something terrifying in his profile, a ruthlessness that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with violence. Then he turned to her, and the mask softened. Are you all right? He asked. You should not have done that, Maya said quietly. He will write me up the second you check out. He will not touch you, Dante said. The certainty in his voice sent a chill down her spine. I will make sure of it. Thank you, she whispered, because despite the fear, the gratitude was stronger. No one had ever stood up for her like that. Go take a break, Maya, he said gently. I am going upstairs. He picked up his jacket and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the quiet lobby, her hand still tingling where he had touched it. 20 minutes later, Maya was in the staff locker room, changing her shoes. Her feet were throbbing. The door banged open and 2 housekeeping staff, Sarah and Jenny, burst in, giggling. Did you see him? Sarah asked, flopping onto a bench. The guy in the penthouse. Mr. Reed? Maya asked, keeping her head down as she tied her laces. If that is his real name, Jenny laughed, opening her locker. Have you seen those guys he walks with? They look like they are carrying guns under those jackets. I swear, he looks like a mobster from one of those movies. All he needs is a cat to stroke. He's definitely rich enough, Sarah added, and scary. I went up to turn down the bed yesterday, and one of his guards stood in the doorway the whole time. Didn't say a word, just watched me fluff the pillows. They dissolved into laughter again. Maya forced a smile. He's just a businessman, she said, though the words tasted like ash. Probably tech or finance. They are all weird. I do not know, Jenny said, lowering her voice to a dramatic whisper. He has that look. Dangerous. But hot dangerous. Maya gathered her things and left the room before they could see the flush on her cheeks. She walked back out to the floor, but the conversation stuck in her mind. Mobster. It was a joke, a stereotype. But as she crossed the lobby, she thought about the way his men moved, always scanning, always positioning themselves between him and the door. She thought about the way Dante had looked at Mr. Henderson, like he was an insect he could crush without raising his pulse. The lobby was empty again. Maya needed to deliver a folio to the accounting office, which required her to pass by the entrance of the hotel bar. It was a dimly lit, velvet-lined space that usually hosted tired businessmen and couples having affairs. Tonight, it was quiet. As she passed the arched doorway, movement caught her eye. In the far corner, almost hidden by a large potted palm, sat Dante. He was not alone. Sitting across from him was a man Maya had never seen before. He was older, with silver hair and a jagged, pale scar running from his temple down to his jaw. He was dressed impeccably, but his posture was rigid. Maya slowed her steps. Staying in the shadows of the hallway, they were speaking in low tones, too quiet for her to hear the words, but the body language was screaming. Dante was leaning forward, his forearms on the table, his face hard. The other man looked nervous. He kept glancing at the door. Then, the man with the scar reached into his jacket and slid a thick, creamy envelope across the table. Dante placed his hand over it immediately. He did not open it. He just held it there. his eyes never leaving the other man's face. The air around them seemed to vibrate with tension. It was not a business meeting. It was a negotiation or a threat. Maya felt a cold prickle of fear dance along her skin. This was not normal. This was not tech money or finance. This was something else. She took a step back, intending to slip away unnoticed. Her shoe squeaked on the marble floor. It was a tiny sound, barely a whisper, but in the silence, it sounded like a gunshot. Dante's head snapped toward the doorway. His eyes locked onto hers instantly. There was no warmth in them now. They were predatory, alert, and terrifyingly cold. For a heartbeat. He looked at her like she was a stranger he needed to eliminate. Then, recognition flickered. His expression didn't soften, but the lethal edge dulled slightly. Maya spun on her heel and walked away, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She hurried to the accounting office, dropped off the papers, and practically ran back to the safety of the front desk. She spent the next hour jumping at shadows. Every time the elevator chimed, she flinched. At 3 a.m, the elevator doors opened. Maya stiffened, refusing to look up from her computer screen. She heard footsteps approaching, the familiar, measured stride. He stopped at the counter. Maya. She forced herself to look up. He was alone. The jacket was back on, buttoned up. The tie was tightened. He looked perfectly composed, as if the scene in the bar had never happened. Mr. Reed, she said. Her voice sounded thin. Is there something I can help you with? He leaned in. He did not smile. He rested his hands on the marble, invading her space again. But this time, it didn't feel like flirtation. It felt like containment. You left in a hurry earlier, he said softly. I was working, Maya said, her fingers gripping the edge of the desk until her knuckles turned white. I did not mean to intrude. He studied her face, searching for something. He must have seen the fear in her eyes because his expression shifted. A tiny, rueful smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. Curiosity looks good on you, Maya, he murmured, his voice dipping low, vibrating with a mix of amusement and a very real warning. But sometimes, it is not safe to stare. The intimacy of it, the way he used her name, the way he leaned in so close she could feel the heat radiating from him, made her skin flush. It was a threat, yes, but it was also a protective command. Don't look. Stay safe. I understand, she whispered. Good, he said. He tapped his fingers once on the counter. Good night, Maya. He walked away, leaving her trembling. The rest of the night passed in a blur of anxiety. Just before dawn, the storm outside kicked up again. Wind howled against the glass, and thunder rattled the window panes. Suddenly, the lights in the lobby flickered, once, twice. Then, darkness. The main chandeliers died. The computer screens went black. For 5 seconds, the entire ground floor was pitch black. Maya gasped, freezing in place. Then, the emergency backup generators kicked in with a low hum. Dim. Amber emergency lights bathed the lobby in shadows, creating pools of darkness and light. Maya! She hadn't heard him approach. Dante was there, standing right next to the opening of the front desk. In the dim light, his features were sharp, angular shadows. I am here, she said, her voice shaking. It is just a power outage. The storm must have hit a line. Are you okay? He asked. He stepped behind the counter. Strictly speaking, guests were not allowed behind the desk, but Maya was not going to tell him to leave. The lobby was suddenly a cavern of spooky shadows, and his presence was the only solid thing in the world. He stood next to her, looking at the dead monitor. He was so close that his chest almost brushed her shoulder. In the semi-darkness, the boundaries of propriety felt like they had vanished with the lights. I am fine, she said. I just need to call maintenance. She picked up the landline phone. Dead air. The phones are down too. Dante turned to face her. The space behind the desk was narrow. They were inches apart. Maya could feel the warmth of his body through her thin blouse. She could smell that intoxicating mix of cedar and rain. I do not like you being down here alone in the dark, he said. His voice was a low rumble in the quiet room. Security is around, she said, though she didn't sound convincing. "I will walk you to the staff elevator," he said. It wasn't a question. "I cannot leave the desk," she protested weakly. "The desk is not going anywhere," he said. "And neither are the guests. Come." He reached out and placed his hand on the small of her back. The contact burned. Even through the fabric of her uniform, his touch was searing. It was possessive and guiding. He applied a gentle pressure, urging her toward the staff corridor. Maya let him guide her. She felt a shiver race up her spine, a confusing mix of fear and desire. She should pull away. She should tell him to stop. But her body betrayed her. She leaned slightly into his touch, seeking the comfort of his strength against the chaos of the night. They walked in silence down the dim hallway. The emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows against the walls. His hand never left her back. At the staff elevator, he pressed the button. "Go up to the break room," he instructed. "Stay there until the lights come back on." "What about you?" she asked, looking up at him. The amber light caught the sharp angles of his face, making him look beautiful and dangerous. "I will be fine," he said. He looked at her, his gaze dropping to her lips again. For a second, Maya thought he might kiss her. She wanted him to. The realization shocked her, despite the gun-toting guards, despite the shady envelope, despite the warning. She wanted him to close the distance. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. Dante stepped back, his hand falling away from her waist. The loss of contact made her feel instantly colder. "Be safe, Maya," he said. She stepped into the elevator. "You too, Daniel." She used his fake name, but her eyes said she knew there was more. The doors closed, separating them. 2 hours later, Maya lay in her bed in her cramped apartment. The rain tapped against her window. She stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She replayed the night over and over. The way his thumb had brushed the ink on her hand, the cold, deadly look he had given the manager, the warning in the lobby, the heat of his hand on her back in the dark. She told herself he was just a guest, a wealthy, dangerous man who would check out in a few days and leave her life as quickly as he had entered it. She told herself she was being stupid. But as she drifted towards sleep, her body remembered. It remembered how close he had stood. It remembered the drop in his voice when he said her name. It felt like he had planted a flag in her world, claiming a piece of her attention that she would never be able to take back. He was dangerous. She knew that now. But God help her. She wasn't sure if she wanted to run away or run straight into the fire. The phone call came during Maya's break, huddled in the drafty corridor behind the kitchen where the smell of dish soap and old grease clung to the walls. They raised it again. "Maya, her brother," Kevin said. His voice sounded thin, tinny through the bad reception. "The landlord says market rates are going up in the neighborhood. He wants another $300 a month starting next week." Mom is freaking out. She's talking about selling her wedding ring. Maya closed her eyes, leaning her forehead against the cool cinder block wall. "Tell her not to do that. Kevin, do not let her sell the ring." "Then what are we going to do?" Kevin asked, the panic rising in his throat. "I'm already pulling double shifts at the warehouse. We do not have it. Maya." "I will figure it out," she said, though she had no idea how. "I will get in advance, or I will pick up the weekend mornings too. Just tell her to keep the ring. Please." She hung up, her hand shaking. $300. It might as well have been $3 million. She was already drowning, treading water in a sea of bills that kept rising higher with every tide. When she returned to the front desk, the exhaustion she had been holding at bay crashed over her. Her smile felt brittle, like it might shatter if anyone looked at it too hard. The lobby was busy for a Tuesday night, guests checking in for a midweek conference, their demands sharp and impatient. "Excuse me," a voice snapped. Maya blinked, focusing on the man standing across the marble counter. He was middle-aged, wearing a suit that was expensive but ill-fitting, his face flushed with the kind of entitlement that usually signaled trouble. "Good evening, sir," Maya said, her voice automatic. "How can I help you?" "I ordered a bottle of sparkling water to my room 40 minutes ago," the man spat. "I'm still waiting." "Is this a 5-star hotel or a roadside motel? Because right now, the service is garbage. "I apologize, sir," Maya said, typing quickly to check the housekeeping logs. "We're a little short-staffed tonight due to the flu season. Let me call room service right now and—" "I do not want you to call room service," he shouted, slapping his hand on the counter. The sound echoed through the high ceilings of the lobby, drawing the eyes of every person in the room. "I want you to do your job. I pay $600 a night to stay in this place, and I expect competence. Look at me when I am talking to you." Maya flinched. The stress of the phone call, the lack of sleep, the fear for her mother, it all bubbled up. Her throat constricted. She felt the hot, stinging prickle of tears in her eyes. She bit the inside of her cheek, willing them away, but her chin wobbled. "I'm trying to help you, sir," she whispered. "You are useless," the man sneered, leaning in. "Maybe if you spent less time looking pretty and more time working, I would have my water. I think that is enough." The voice did not shout. It did not need to. It cut through the noise of the lobby like a blade through silk, deep, resonant, and terrifyingly calm. The angry guest froze. He turned slowly. Dante stood there. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit tonight, the fabric absorbing the light. He stood with his hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed, but his eyes were fixed on the shouting man with a look of absolute, predatory boredom. Behind him, near the elevators, his two shadows watched, silent and imposing. "Who are you?" the guest demanded, though his voice wavered. "I am a guest who prefers a quiet lobby," Dante said. He took 2 steps forward, closing the distance. He towered over the other man. "You are screaming at a woman because you are thirsty. It is pathetic." "She is incompetent," the guest spluttered, pointing a shaking finger at Maya. Dante's gaze flicked to the finger, then back to the man's face. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "If you point that finger at her again," Dante said, his voice dropping to a murmur that only the 3 of them could hear, "I will break it." The guest went pale. He looked at Dante's eyes, saw the utter lack of hesitation there, and swallowed hard. The bluster evaporated instantly. I will just go to the bar," the guest mumbled. He grabbed his room key and hurried away, not looking back. Silence settled over the desk. Maya stood frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the marble until her knuckles turned white. She was shaking. The tears she had fought so hard to suppress were now threatening to spill over because of the sudden release of tension. Dante turned to her. The hardness vanished from his face, replaced by a concern that made her chest ache. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "I am fine," Maya managed, though her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I should have handled that better." "You handled it fine," Dante said. He looked at her, really looked at her, noting the tremors in her hands and the glassy sheen of her eyes. "You need a minute. Come with me." "I cannot leave the desk," she said automatically. "The night manager is coming out of his office right now," Dante said, nodding toward the back. "He can cover the phones for 10 minutes. Come." It wasn't a request. He turned and walked toward a secluded alcove off the main lobby, a private lounge reserved for VIP guests. Maya hesitated, then looked at the manager approaching. She didn't wait to ask. She followed Dante. The lounge was dim and quiet, smelling of leather and old books. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and red. Dante led her to a small velvet sofa in the corner, shielded from the doorway by a bookshelf. "Sit," he said gently. Maya sat. Her legs felt like jelly. Dante sat in the armchair opposite her, then seemed to change his mind. He moved to the other end of the sofa, sitting close enough that his knee brushed against hers. "Breathe," he said. Maya took a shaky breath. "I am sorry. I do not know why I let him get to me. Guests yell all the time. It is part of the job." It was not the guest, Dante observed. His voice was low, wrapping around her like a warm blanket. "You looked like you were already breaking before he opened his mouth." "What is it, Maya?" She looked out the window at the rain. She wanted to lie. She wanted to put up the walls she had spent years building. But he was sitting so close, and he had just stepped in front of a bully for her, and she was so tired of carrying it all alone. "My brother called," she whispered. "My landlord raised the rent again." Dante was silent. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He waited. "My mother is talking about selling her wedding ring," Maya continued, the words tumbling out now. "And I am working 60 hours a week, and it is not enough. It is never enough. I feel like I am running on a treadmill that is going too fast, and if I trip, my whole family falls off with me." She looked down at her hands, twisting the fabric of her uniform skirt. "It is stupid. It is just money. Everyone has problems." "It is not stupid," Dante said. She felt him move. He reached out, his hand entering her field of vision. Slowly, deliberately. He cupped her cheek. Maya froze. His hand was warm, his palm rougher than she expected, calloused in a way that spoke of work, not just signing checks. His thumb brushed just under her eye, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. The touch was electric. It sent a jolt of heat rushing through her veins, settling deep in her stomach. She turned her face automatically into his palm, leaning into the contact. It was such a simple, protective gesture, but it unraveled her completely. "You're carrying too much weight for shoulders this small," he murmured. Maya looked up at him. His dark eyes were soft, searching hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "I have to," she said. "There is no one else." "There is always someone else," he said enigmatically. "You just have to let them in." He didn't pull his hand away. He let it rest there, his fingers curling slightly around her jaw, holding her gaze. The air in the small lounge grew heavy, charged with a silence that pulsed between them. It wasn't the tension of danger this time. It was the tension of gravity, pulling two bodies toward a center point. "Tell me about the studio," he said, shifting the topic but keeping the intimacy. "The one you want to own?" Maya blinked, surprised. "I told you that days ago. I remember everything you tell me," Dante said. A flush rose on her neck. "It would be in the old district," she said softly. "Brick walls, big windows facing north for the light. I would teach classes on the weekends to pay the bills, and just paint during the week. No phones, no rude guests, just quiet." "It sounds peaceful," he said. "It sounds impossible," she countered. "Nothing is impossible," he said. He leaned in closer, his knee pressed firmly against hers now, a solid point of contact that grounded her. He was so close she could smell the clean soap scent of his skin beneath the expensive cologne. She could feel the warmth of his breath. "You have a fire in you, Maya," he whispered. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there. "I saw it the first night. You hide it under this uniform and this polite smile, but it is there." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She felt like she was standing on a precipice. "I do not feel very fiery right now." "No?" He smiled. A small, crooked thing that made her knees weak. His thumb brushed the corner of her mouth, a feather-light touch that made her lips part on a sharp intake of breath. "You are teasing me," she whispered, the words trembling. Dante's eyes darkened, the smile faded, replaced by a look of raw, restrained hunger. "If you tease me again with that look," he began, repeating the words he had said that first night. But the tone was different. It wasn't playful anymore. It was rough, edged with a desperation that he was barely holding back. "I might forget that I am supposed to be a gentleman. I might forget that I am trying to keep you safe from things you do not understand." Maya stared at him, her pulse thudding in her ears. He wasn't talking about hotel policy. He was talking about control. He was telling her that his control was fraying, snapping thread by thread every time he looked at her. And God help her, she wanted it to snap. She felt a sudden, reckless surge of courage. She turned her head slightly, pressing her lips against the center of his palm. Dante inhaled sharply. His hand tightened on her jaw, his fingers sliding into the hair at the nape of her neck. He leaned in, his mouth inches from hers. "Maya," he groaned, a sound that vibrated in his chest. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Dante froze. The moment shattered instantly. He pulled back, his hand falling from her face, his posture shifting from intimate to alert in a split second. Maya blinked, cold air rushing into the space between them. A man appeared in the doorway of the lounge. It was the one with the scar, Leo. She thought she had heard someone call him. He didn't look at Maya. He looked straight at Dante and gave a single, sharp nod. Dante's face changed. The tenderness, the heat, the vulnerability. It was all wiped away as if it had never existed. His jaw tightened, his eyes turning into shards of black ice. He wasn't Daniel Reed anymore. He was something else, something harder. He stood up, buttoning his jacket with a sharp snap. "I have to go," he said. His voice was distant, clipped. Maya stood up too, feeling dizzy and bereft. "Is everything okay?" He looked at her then. For a brief second, the mask slipped, and she saw regret in his eyes. He reached out and brushed his knuckles over her shoulder, a fleeting, phantom touch that burned. "Stay here for a few minutes," he said. "Finish your break. Do not come out until you feel steady." And then he was gone, striding out of the room with his men, leaving Maya standing alone in the dim light, her cheek still warm from his hand. 2 hours later, the hotel was quiet. Maya was on her scheduled lunch break. She didn't want to sit in the staff room and listen to the gossip, so she took her sandwich and walked toward the loading dock, hoping for some fresh air. The quickest way was through the service corridors, a maze of gray concrete hallways that ran behind the polished walls of the hotel like veins. The corridor was empty, lined with linen carts and stacks of chairs. It was silent, except for the hum of the industrial refrigerators. As she turned a corner near the maintenance office, she heard a voice. It was low, angry, and coming from the stairwell door that was propped slightly open. Maya stopped. She knew that voice. It was Dante, but it didn't sound like the man who had wiped away her tear. It sounded like the man who had terrified the rude guest, magnified by 10. "I do not care what the excuse is," Dante was saying. The concrete walls amplified the menace in his tone. "The shipment was supposed to be in the harbor by midnight." Maya pressed herself against the wall, her heart starting to race. "Shipment?" Another voice answered, muffled and nervous. "Boss, the union guys are pushing back. They say the territory is disputed." "There is no dispute," Dante's voice cut in, cold and lethal. "This is Romano territory. It has been Romano territory for 50 years. You tell them that if they touch a single crate, I will bury them under the foundation of their own warehouse." Maya slapped a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Romano. The name hit her like a physical blow. Everyone in the city knew the name Romano. It was in the newspapers every other week, usually connected to words like racketeering, organized crime, and unsolved. The Romanos were not just a family, they were an institution of violence in Graybridge. "I will handle it, boss," the other voice said. "Does the family know you are exposed here?" "My location is not your concern," Dante snapped. "Fix the problem, or I will find someone who can—" There was the sound of a phone beeping off. Maya stood paralyzed. Her mind was reeling, trying to reconcile the image of the man who had looked at her with such tenderness, with the man who had just threatened to bury people under a warehouse. He is not Daniel Reed. The realization crashed into her. He is Dante Romano. She wasn't flirting with a rich guest. She was falling for a crime lord. Fear spiked in her chest, cold, sharp, and rational. She needed to get out of there. She needed to go back to the desk, pretend she knew nothing, and stay as far away from him as possible. She turned to retreat, stepping carefully. Her foot scuffed against a loose tile. The sound was small, but in the echoing hallway, it was enough. The stairwell door swung open. Dante stepped out. He was 10 feet away. He saw her instantly. He didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. He took a step toward her, his movements fluid and stalking. He was still wearing the suit, but now it felt like a costume covering something feral. "Maya," he said. His voice was careful, devoid of the warmth from the lounge. Maya took a step back, her back hitting a linen cart. I was just taking a shortcut to the loading dock." He stopped 5 feet from her. His eyes searched her face, scanning every twitch of her muscle, every shift of her gaze. He was looking for the lie. "How long have you been standing there?" he asked. "I just got here." Maya lied. Her voice was too high. She cleared her throat. "I didn't hear anything, I swear." He studied her. He looked at her stiff shoulders, the way she was gripping her own arms, the forced, terrified smile she was plastering on her face. He knew. "You are a terrible liar, Maya," he said softly. He took another step. The air between them crackled, but it wasn't the sweet tension of the lounge. This was dangerous. This was the predator realizing the prey has seen its teeth. "I have to get back to work," Maya said, edging sideways. "My break is over, Bintai." Dante moved to block her path, not aggressively, but effectively. He loomed over her. "What did you hear?" he asked. "Nothing," she insisted, panic rising. "I heard nothing. Please, Mr. Reed, I just want to go back to the desk." He flinched at the name Reed. He looked at her for a long, agonizing moment, debating something internally. She saw the conflict in his eyes, the urge to silence her versus the urge to comfort her. Finally. He exhaled a sharp breath and stepped back, giving her room to pass. "Go," he said. Maya didn't wait. She bolted past him, her shoulder brushing his arm. She felt him turn to watch her go, his gaze burning a hole between her shoulder blades. That night, Maya lay in her bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. She was safe. She was home. But she felt trapped. She replayed the conversation in the stairwell. Romano. She knew what she should do. She should call the police. She should quit her job. She should run. He was a criminal. He was dangerous. He was everything she had sworn to avoid. But then her memory shifted. She felt the phantom weight of his hand on her cheek. She saw the way he had looked at her in the lounge, like she was the only real thing in the world. She heard the raw honesty in his voice when he said he was trying to protect her. Her moral compass was screaming at her to run, but her heart was doing something much more treacherous. It was aching for him. She rolled over, burying her face in the pillow. She was terrified of him. She was terrified of what he did. But mostly, she was terrified by the fact that even now, knowing who he was, she wanted him to touch her again. The atmosphere in the Harbor Line Hotel changed on a Tuesday. It was not something a casual guest would notice, but Maya felt it in the marrow of her bones. The air grew heavier, charged with a static electricity that had nothing to do with the weather. It started with the men in the bar. For weeks, the hotel lounge had been a place of quiet business meetings and tired travelers nursing nightcaps. Now, it felt like a staging ground. A new group of regulars had taken over the plush leather booths near the back entrance. They were not loud, and they paid their tabs in cash, but they carried themselves with a sharp, predatory alertness that made the hair on Maya's arm stand up whenever she walked past. At the center of this new gravity was a man named Victor Dalka. Victor was different from Dante. Where Dante was dark oak and shadows, Victor was polished steel. He was lean, with pale eyes that seemed to strip the world down to its market value. He wore suits that were lighter in color, grays and icy blues, and he smiled too much. It was a smile that never reached his eyes, a facial expression he wore like a mask to put people at ease before he dissected them. Maya noticed that whenever Victor was in the lounge, Dante was there too. Dante no longer sat in the secluded corners. He positioned himself at the high tables near the center of the room, a vantage point that gave him a clear line of sight to both the main entrance and the front desk. He drank his espresso with deceptive calm, but Maya saw the tension in his shoulders. He was a sentinel. He was watching the doors, watching Victor, and most terrifying of all, he was watching her. He still made time for her. When the lobby lulled, he would walk by the desk, his hands in his pockets, and offer a nod or a brief, dry comment about the weather. But the playfulness was gone. His eyes didn't sparkle with hidden mirth anymore. They were dark and focused, scanning the space around her as if calculating angles of attack. "You are standing in the open," he murmured one evening as he passed, placing a coffee cup on the counter for her. "I am a receptionist," Maya replied, keeping her voice low. "Being in the open is the job description. Keep your eyes up," was all he said before moving away, positioning himself between her and the line of sight from Victor's booth. Maya felt a confusing mixture of warmth and dread. She knew, rationally, that she should be terrified. She knew she should go to HR or the police and tell them that two rival gangs seemed to be playing chess in the lobby of a luxury hotel, but she didn't. Every time she looked at Dante, she remembered the way he had touched her cheek, the way he had defended her honor against the rude guest. She felt safer with him standing guard than she would have with a dozen police officers. The Cold War in the lobby escalated 3 nights later. It was 2 a.m. The lobby was quiet, the marble floors reflecting the dim overhead lights. Maya was alone at the desk, auditing the night's receipts. The silence was thick, broken only by the hum of the computers. "You work very hard, Maya." The voice was smooth, like oil pouring over glass. Maya looked up. Victor Dalka was standing at the counter. She hadn't heard him approach. He moved with a silence that was different from Dante's. Dante moved like a panther. Heavy and deliberate, Victor moved like a snake. "Good evening, sir," Maya said, her professional mask slamming into place. "Can I help you with something?" "I have been watching you," Victor said. He leaned his elbows on the high counter, invading her personal space. His pale eyes drifted over her face, assessing her features with a cold, detached interest. "You are very dedicated, very professional. It is rare to see that kind of loyalty in a place like this." "I enjoy my job," Maya lied. "Do you?" Victor tilted his head. "Or do you enjoy the company? I notice you spend a lot of time talking to the gentleman in the penthouse suite, Mr. Reed. I believe he calls himself—" A chill ran down Maya's spine. The way he said the name Reed dripped with irony. "Mr. Reed is a guest," Maya said, her fingers curling into fists under the desk. "I speak to all our guests, but not like you speak to him," Victor said. He reached out and picked up a pen from the counter, twirling it between his long fingers. "You look at him differently." "And he certainly looks at you differently. It makes a man wonder." "Wonder what, sir?" Maya asked, her voice tight. "Wonder if you are part of the package," Victor said, his smile widening to show perfect, white teeth. "Wonder if you are a civilian or if you are an asset." He leaned in closer. "Tell me, Maya, does he pay you well, or is it a labor of love?" Maya felt her skin crawl. The implication was disgusting, but the threat behind it was worse. He was fishing. He was trying to see how much she mattered to Dante. "I think you should step back," a voice rumbled. Dante materialized beside Maya. He didn't make a sound. 1 second the space was empty, and the next, he was there. He placed one hand flat on the front of the counter, his body angled slightly in front of Maya, creating a physical barrier between her and Victor. The air in the lobby seemed to vanish, sucked out by the sheer pressure of the confrontation. Victor didn't flinch. He just stopped twirling the pen and looked at Dante with amused eyes. "Daniel," Victor said, his voice light, "I was just getting to know the staff. She is charming. She is working," Dante said. His voice was not loud, but it had a texture like grinding stones. "And you are disturbing her." "I was merely being polite," Victor said. He dropped the pen back onto the marble with a sharp clatter. "You know me, always making friends. I know you," Dante said. The words were heavy with subtext. "And I know that you are finished here for the night. The bar is closed. Victor?" Victor straightened up, smoothing the lapels of his light gray suit. The two men stared at each other. They were of equal height, but Dante seemed denser, more solid, while Victor seemed like something that would slip through your fingers if you tried to grab him. "You seem very protective of this one," Victor murmured, his gaze flicking to Maya and then back to Dante. "That is interesting. Sentimental attachments can be heavy to carry." "Good night, Victor," Dante said. It was a dismissal and a threat. Victor chuckled softly. "Good night, Daniel. Sleep well. The city is full of surprises lately." Victor turned and walked away, his footsteps clicking rhythmically on the marble. He didn't look back. Maya let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for 5 minutes. Her knees knocked together. She looked at Dante. He was staring at Victor's retreating back, his jaw set so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. "Dante," she whispered. He turned to her instantly. The violence in his eyes dialed down, but the intensity remained. "Did he touch you?" Dante asked. No, Maya said. He asked questions. About you. Dante cursed under his breath, a sharp foreign word that sounded like a knife striking stone. He looked around the lobby, checking for more threats, then turned back to her. Come with me, he said. I cannot leave the... Now, Maya. He led her not to the lounge this time, but to a small service corridor behind the front desk, a narrow hallway lined with filing cabinets and printer paper. It was private, harsh under the fluorescent security lights, and claustrophobic. He stopped and turned to face her, blocking the exit with his broad shoulders. What exactly did he say? Dante demanded. His voice was urgent, stripping away the polite veneer he usually wore. He asked if I enjoyed your company, Maya said, hugging her arms around herself. He asked if I was an asset. He wanted to know if I was part of the package. Dante closed his eyes for a second, looking pained. He is testing the waters. He sees me watching you. He thinks I am weak because I am distracted. Who is he? Maya snapped. The fear was turning into anger now, anger at being a pawn in a game she didn't understand. And who are you? I am tired of the riddles. Dante. I'm tired of the fake names and the scary men in suits. You have to tell me the truth. Dante looked at her. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating in the narrow hallway. He looked at her defiance, at the way she held her chin up despite the trembling of her hands. My name is not Daniel Reed, he said quietly. I know, Maya said. I heard you on the phone. You are a Romano? He flinched slightly, as if the name were a physical blow. Yes, I am Dante Romano. The crime family, she stated flatly. The organization, he corrected, though his tone was bitter. My father built it. He was a cruel, greedy man who loved power more than his own blood. When he died, it fell to me. I did not want it. I hated him, and I hated the life. But you do not just walk away from a thing like this. If I left, the vacuum would cause a war that would burn this city to the ground. So I stayed. I took control to keep it from becoming worse. He took a step closer to her. Victor Dalka is a rival. He wants what I have. He wants the territory, the routes, the power. He has been circling for months, looking for a way to strike. And me? Maya asked, her voice trembling. What am I? You are the mistake I made, Dante said, his voice rough. I should have ignored you. I should have treated you like furniture, the way everyone else does, but I couldn't. You looked at me with those eyes, and you drew, and you had ink on your hands, and you were so real. He reached out, his hands hovering near her shoulders before he finally gave in and gripped them. His touch was firm, grounding. Victor sees that, Dante continued. He sees that I look at you. He sees that I step in when guests are rude. He thinks that if he hurts you, he can break me. He wants to use you as leverage. The honesty hit Maya like a punch to the gut. She felt betrayed. He had dragged her into this nightmare just by paying attention to her. But beneath the betrayal, there was a strange, twisted sense of honor. He wasn't lying to protect himself anymore. He was handing her the truth like a loaded gun. So I am a target because you like me? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. You are a target because I care about you, Dante corrected. And in my world, caring about anything is a weakness. Maya stared up at him. The hallway felt suddenly very small. They were inches apart, the air between them vibrating with the confession. She should push him away. She should scream. She should run out that door and never come back. But she didn't. She looked at the man in front of her, not the crime boss, but the man who had brought her coffee, the man who had wiped away her tears, the man who was currently looking at her with an expression of utter devastation. You should walk away, Maya, Dante murmured. His grip on her shoulders tightened just slightly, betraying his words. You should quit. Go stay with your mother. Get as far away from me as you can. Is that what you want? She asked. No, he rasped. God, no. I want you to stay. I want to keep looking at you. I want to be near you. Maya's breath hitched. Her anger was bleeding away, replaced by a vulnerability that terrified her. She raised her hands and pressed her palms against his chest. She could feel his heart beating under the fine wool of his suit, a steady, heavy rhythm that matched her own. "Was any of it real?" she asked. "The way you talked to me? The things you said about my art? Or was that just part of the cover?" Dante let out a ragged breath. He released her shoulders and brought his hands up to cradle her face. His fingers tangled in the hair at the nape of her neck, his thumbs tracing the line of her jaw. "It was the only real thing I have felt in 10 years, he whispered. He lowered his forehead until it rested against hers. He closed his eyes, exhaling a long, shuddering breath, as if he had been holding it since he walked into the hotel. "You are the only calm I have, Maya," he confessed into the space between them. "When I am with you, I do not hear the noise. I do not see the blood. I just see you." Maya closed her eyes too. She felt surrounded by him. The scent of him, rain, cedar, and danger filled her senses. She felt the warmth of his body seeping into hers, chasing away the chill of Victor's stare. She knew he was bad. She knew he had blood on his hands, but standing here, held by him, she didn't feel afraid of him. She felt an ache in her chest that was so powerful it hurt. He shifted slightly, tilting his head. His nose brushed against hers. His lips were millimeters away. Maya's lips parted. A tiny, soft gasp escaped her throat. She felt his thumb brush the corner of her mouth, a reverence in the touch that made her knees weak. She wanted him to kiss her. She wanted to forget the hotel, the rival gangs, the debts, the fear. She wanted to drown in the safety of his arms. But the logical part of her brain, the part that sketched floor plans and paid bills, slammed on the brakes. She couldn't. Not like this. Not when she was a target. Not when his world was threatening to swallow hers whole. She pulled back. It took every ounce of her strength. But she pulled her head back an inch. Dante froze. He didn't try to chase her. He didn't force the moment. He stopped instantly, his eyes opening to search hers. They were dark, dilated, swirling with a storm of emotion. "I cannot," Maya whispered. "Dante, I cannot do this right now. It is too much. I'm scared." He stared at her for a heartbeat, then nodded slowly. He understood. He respected it. "I know," he said, his voice rough. "I am sorry." He let his hands fall from her face. Though he didn't step back, he stayed in her personal space, shielding her from the rest of the hotel. "I need time," she said. "I need to think. I need space." "You have it," Dante said immediately. "I will not touch you. I will not push you." He took a half step back, putting a polite distance between them, but the look in his eyes hadn't changed. It was fierce, possessive, and absolute. "But I will not leave you unprotected," he vowed. "You can have all the space you want, Maya. But Victor is still out there, and I will not let him touch you. I will burn this city down before I let him hurt you." Maya shivered. It was a promise made of violence, but it was made for her. "Okay," she whispered. "Go back to the desk," he said softly. "I will be in the lobby. I will not be far." Maya nodded and slipped past him. As she walked back to the front desk, she felt his eyes on her back, a heavy, tangible weight. In the days that followed, the dynamic shifted. Dante kept his word. He didn't lean on the counter anymore. He didn't brush her hand when she passed him coffee. He stayed on his side of the room, maintaining a respectful, professional distance. But he was always there. He became a shadow. Whenever Maya looked up from her computer, he was somewhere in her periphery, sitting in a chair by the window, standing near the elevator bank, pacing slowly near the concierge desk. And he wasn't alone. Maya noticed the black SUV parked across the street every night when she arrived and every morning when she left. It was always there, engine idling, dark tint hiding the occupants. She noticed that when she took the bus, a nondescript sedan seemed to follow the bus route 2 cars back. She tried to pretend she didn't see it. She tried to tell herself it was creepy, invasive, but late one night, as she walked to the bus stop in the pouring rain, she saw a group of loud, drunk men stumbling down the sidewalk toward her. Fear spiked in her chest. She gripped her pepper spray. Then, she heard a car door slam. She glanced across the street. Two of Dante's men had stepped out of the SUV. They didn't cross the street. They didn't shout. They just stood there, under the streetlights, watching the drunk men with silent, menacing intent. The drunk men saw the suits. They saw the size of them. They sobered up instantly, crossing the street to avoid Maya entirely, keeping their heads down. Maya stood alone at the bus stop, the rain soaking her shoes. She looked across the street. The men in suits nodded once, then got back into the car. She let out a breath, her heart rate slowing. She was being watched by a crime lord. She was a target for his enemies. Her life had become a dangerous, complicated mess. And yet, as she boarded her bus, Maya realized the most confusing truth of all. She had never felt safer in her life. The staff parking garage at 3 a.m. was a cavern of gray concrete and humming fluorescent lights. It smelled of gasoline and damp dust. Usually, Maya did not mind the walk to the bus stop, but tonight the shadows felt longer than usual. The air was cold, biting through her thin blazer. She clutched her purse tight against her side. Her keys laced through her fingers, a habit born of city living. Her footsteps echoed against the low ceiling, a lonely, rhythmic clatter that emphasized the silence. She turned the corner toward the exit ramp and stopped. 2 men were standing between her and the street. They were not hotel guests. They were not staff. They wore leather jackets that looked expensive but sat wrong on their shoulders, and their jeans were too stiff. They were leaning against a silver sedan that was parked diagonally across 2 spaces, blocking the path. Maya felt her stomach drop. Her instincts, honed by years of navigating late shifts and empty streets, screamed at her to turn around. She took a step back. "Miss Nguyen," one of the men said. He pushed off the car and took a step toward her. He was tall, with a shaved head and a smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. "Do not run off. We've been waiting for you." "I do not know you," Maya said, her voice shaking but loud. "Move your car. We are friends of Mr. Romano," the man said. The use of the name made Maya freeze. "He asked us to come pick you up. He was worried about you taking the bus so late. A chivalrous guy, right?" "Dante would not send you," Maya said. She knew it instantly. Dante would have sent Leo, or he would have come himself. He would not have sent 2 strangers who looked at her like wolves looking at a wounded deer. "I'm going back inside." She turned to run back toward the service elevator. The second man moved faster than she expected. He lunged forward, cutting off her retreat. He didn't touch her, but he stood close enough that she could smell stale tobacco and mint gum. "Do not be difficult, sweetheart," the second man said. His voice was raspy. "Mister, Dalka just wants to have a chat. He wants to know what kind of bedtime stories Dante tells you." "Victor." The name turned the fear in her blood to ice. They circled her slowly, their movements coordinated. They were herding her toward the silver car. "Get away from me!" Maya screamed, the sound tearing through the garage. She raised her hand, ready to strike with her keys. "Grab her!" the first man snapped, his fake smile vanishing. Before they could touch her, the garage filled with a roar. High beams blinded them, cutting through the gloom like searchlights. Tires screeched, a harsh, violent sound of rubber burning against concrete. A massive black SUV drifted around the corner, moving with terrifying speed, and slammed to a halt less than 10 feet away, blocking the exit. The doors flew open before the vehicle had even fully settled on its suspension. Dante emerged. He was not wearing his suit jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. His sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with tension. He did not look like a businessman. He looked like a storm given human form. Leo and 2 other guards poured out of the back, moving with military precision. "Back away from her!" Dante roared. His voice echoed off the concrete walls, deep and thunderous. Victor's men hesitated. They looked at the size of Dante's team, then at the SUV. They were outnumbered, but they were desperate. The bald man reached for his waistband. "Do not even think about it," Leo barked. Stepping forward, Dante did not wait for negotiations. He closed the distance to the bald man in 3 long strides. He didn't throw a punch. He simply shoved the man backward with a force that sent him stumbling into the side of the silver sedan with a heavy, metallic crunch. "Get in your car," Dante snarled, looming over the man. "And tell Victor that if he sends anyone near her again, I will not be this polite. I will drive to his house and I will finish this. Do you understand?" The man scrambled to regain his footing, looking at Dante's eyes. Whatever he saw there made him abandon any thought of a fight. He nodded frantically, signaling his partner. They scrambled into the silver car, tires spinning as they reversed and sped out of the garage, fleeing into the night. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya stood trembling in the center of the lane. Her keys fell from her numb fingers, clattering onto the ground. Dante turned to her. The rage on his face vanished the second he looked at her, replaced by a terrified relief. "Maya," he breathed. He reached her just as her knees gave out. He caught her, sweeping her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing. He didn't speak. He carried her straight to the SUV, shielding her body with his own as if he expected bullets to fly from the shadows. He placed her in the back seat and climbed in beside her, slamming the heavy, armored door shut. The world outside disappeared. The interior of the SUV was silent and dark, insulated from the garage. It smelled of leather and Dante. For a moment, Maya just sat there, staring at the back of the driver's seat. Then, the adrenaline crashed. A sob ripped its way out of her throat. It was a raw, ugly sound. Her entire body began to shake violently, her teeth chattering. The reality of what had just happened slammed into her. The wolves, the trap, the fact that she was a pawn in a war she didn't start. "I have you," Dante said. His voice was rough, unsteady. "I have you, Maya. You are safe." He didn't wait for permission. He pulled her across the leather seat and into his chest. Maya didn't resist. She collapsed against him, burying her face in the crook of his neck. She grabbed handfuls of his white shirt, twisting the fabric in her fists, anchoring herself to him. She cried into his skin, hot tears soaking his collar. "I am sorry," he murmured against her hair. "I'm so sorry. I was 5 minutes late. I should have been here." He wrapped his arms around her, enveloping her completely. One arm banded around her waist, holding her tight against him. The other hand cradled the back of her head, his fingers threading through her hair, pressing her closer. Maya breathed him in. He smelled of rain, cedar, and the sharp tang of his own fear under her cheek. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs, matching her own. He wasn't the unshakable boss right now. He was a man who had almost lost something precious. "They knew my name," she sobbed, her voice muffled against his skin. "They knew who I was." "I know," Dante whispered. His hand moved down her back in long, firm strokes, trying to soothe the tremors running through her spine. "I know, it is my fault, but it is over. I have you." She stayed there for a long time, letting him hold her. The warmth of his body seeped into hers, chasing away the cold of the garage. The steady rise and fall of his chest helped regulate her own breathing. Slowly, the hiccuping sobs subsided into quiet. Shaky breaths. The car was still. The driver and guards outside had given them space. The interior light was off, leaving them in a cocoon of shadow, illuminated only by the faint amber glow of the dashboard. Maya pulled back slightly. She didn't let go of his shirt, but she lifted her head to look at him. Dante was watching her. His eyes were dark pools of emotion, reflecting the dashboard lights. He looked wrecked. His hair was messy, his jaw shadowed with stubble, his expression open and agonizingly vulnerable. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. He brought his hand up from her back to cup her face, his thumb tracing the tear tracks on her cheek. "No," she whispered. "Just scared. I will never let you be that scared again," he vowed. The intensity in his voice made the air between them vibrate. He didn't pull his hand away. He kept it there, cupping her jaw, his thumb resting near the corner of her mouth. The movement was a caress, gentle, reverent. Maya looked at him. In the quiet of the car, with the danger locked outside, the dynamic shifted. The need for comfort turned into something else, something hotter. She felt the heat of his hand on her skin. She saw the way his gaze dropped to her lips, then flicked back up to her eyes, dark with a hunger he was trying to suppress. "Dante," she breathed. The sound of his name on her lips seemed to break something in him. His thumb brushed over her lower lip, dragging slightly. Maya felt a jolt of electricity shoot straight to her core. Her heart, which had just slowed down, kicked into a new, heavier rhythm. Without thinking, she tilted her chin up. Her lashes trembled. It was a silent invitation, a surrender to the magnetic pull that had been between them since the first night. Dante hesitated. She could see the war in his eyes, the battle between the man who wanted to protect her and the man who desperately wanted to claim her. His hand trembled slightly against her cheek, then, restraint lost. He closed the distance. He didn't rush. He lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, he pressed his lips to hers. It was not a rough kiss. It was slow. It was aching. It was a soft, warm pressure that tasted of relief and unspoken confessions. Maya let out a small sigh and melted into him. Her hand slid up his chest to wrap around his neck, her fingers tangling in the hair at the base of his skull. Dante groaned low in his throat. The sound vibrated against her lips. He deepened the kiss, his mouth moving over hers with a growing urgency. His hand at her waist tightened, pulling her body flush against his until there was no air left between them. She could feel the hardness of his chest, the strength of his thighs where her knees brushed against him. It was the climax of weeks of stolen glances and unspoken words. It was terrifying and beautiful. Maya opened to him, and the kiss turned passionate, consuming. He tasted like coffee and danger. He kissed her like he was starving, like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. His hand slid from her waist to her hip, gripping her firmly, pulling her even closer. Maya gasped into his mouth, arching into the touch. Every nerve ending in her body was singing. She forgot the garage. She forgot Victor. There was only Dante, and the heat of his mouth, and the desperate, possessive way he was holding her. He broke the kiss first. He pulled back just an inch, his forehead resting against hers, his breath coming in ragged gasps that mingled with hers. "I am sorry," he whispered. Though he didn't sound sorry, he sounded shattered. "I'm trying to be better than the man this life made me, but when I am with you, I cannot think." Maya kept her eyes closed, savoring the feeling of his breath on her face. "Do not be better," she whispered back. "Just be here." Dante let out a shaky breath and kissed her forehead, holding her there in the dark for a long moment, as if memorizing the feel of her in his arms. The sun was blinding the next morning. Maya sat at the small kitchen table in her apartment, staring at a mug of tea she hadn't touched. Her suitcase was open on the floor. Dante stood by the window, peering out through the blinds at the street below. He looked out of place in her small, cluttered apartment, like a panther trapped in a shoebox. "You cannot stay here, Maya," he said. He didn't turn around. "Victor knows where you live. Those men? They were a warning. Next time. They will not wait for me to arrive." "I cannot just leave," Maya argued, though her voice lacked conviction. "I have my job. I have responsibilities. My mother calls this landline." Dante turned to face her. "You can call your mother from a secure line. As for the job, the hotel is compromised. You are taking a leave of absence." "I will get fired," she said. "You will not," Dante said firmly. "I own a controlling interest in the holding company that manages the harbor line. I bought it 3 days ago. Your job is safe." Maya stared at him, mouth slightly open. "You bought the hotel?" "I needed to ensure I could control the security footage," he said with a shrug, as if buying a luxury hotel was the same as buying a newspaper. "Maya, please, I have a penthouse at the residence downtown. It is secure. Private elevator, 24-hour guards. It is the only place I can guarantee your safety until I deal with Victor." "Deal with him?" Maya asked, fear creeping back in. "Until I ensure he can never threaten you again," Dante said. He walked over to the table and knelt down so he was eye level with her. He took her hands in his. "Please," he said. His dark eyes were intense, earnest. I cannot focus on stopping him if I am terrified every minute that he is coming for you. Let me hide you. Let me keep you safe." Maya looked at him. She saw the exhaustion in his face, the desperation. She thought about her mother, about her brother. If Victor couldn't get to her, would he go after them? "If I go," she said, "you have to put security on my family too." "Done," Dante said instantly. "Leo is already parked outside your mother's house. She thinks he is a neighborhood watch volunteer." Maya let out a long sigh. She was trapped, but it was a trap made of gold and good intentions. "Okay," she said, "I will go." Dante squeezed her hands, relief washing over his face. "Thank you." The penthouse was ridiculous. It was larger than Maya's entire apartment building. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the skyline of Graybridge, white marble floors, and furniture that looked like art. It should have felt cold. It should have felt like a prison. But Dante was there. For the next 4 days, the world outside ceased to exist. Dante didn't go into the office. He ran his war from a laptop in the study, but he spent the rest of his time with her, in the vacuum of the penthouse, stripped of the hotel lobby and the public eye. Their relationship shifted. It settled into something quiet and domestic that terrified Maya with how natural it felt. She saw a side of him that the world never saw. She saw him in the morning, hair messy, wearing sweatpants, making toast in the gourmet kitchen. She learned that he drank his tea with honey, not sugar. She learned that he hated the news but loved old jazz records. "You are burning the eggs," she told him on the second morning, sitting on the counter while he cooked. "I am a crime boss, not a chef," he retorted, flipping the pan with a grin. "Eat your charcoal and be grateful." They laughed. It was a sound that rang through the luxurious space, chasing away the shadows in the evenings when the city lights came on below them. They sat on the massive beige sofa. They didn't always talk. Sometimes Maya sketched. He had bought her a new set of high-quality charcoals and a sketchbook while he read files. One rainy Tuesday night, the air in the room was warm and heavy with comfort. Maya was lying on the sofa, her sketchbook forgotten on the floor. Dante was sitting next to her, reading a book. Slowly, tentatively, Maya shifted. She laid her head on his lap. Dante froze for a second, then relaxed. He closed his book and set it aside. His hand came down to rest on her hair, his fingers idly playing with the strands. "Are you tired?" he asked softly. "A little," she mumbled, closing her eyes. She felt safe. The smell of him, the heat of his leg under her cheek, the steady stroke of his hand. It was a drug. "Sleep," he murmured. "I am here." Maya drifted off, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. It was a fragile bubble. She knew it. Outside these glass walls, men were hunting them. Outside. He was a killer and she was a liability. But in here, in the quiet dark of the penthouse, they were just two people who had found a way to be lonely together. She knew it couldn't last, but as she fell asleep with his hand protecting her head, she allowed herself a dangerous, reckless hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to make it real. "If you tease me again with that look," Mafia boss warned. She thought he was just another hot guest, part 6. The penthouse was silent, but it was the silence of a held breath before a scream. Dante stood by the expansive glass wall, fastening the buttons of his black shirt. He moved with a mechanical precision that terrified Maya. Over the last few days, she'd seen the man who made toast and listened to jazz records. Tonight, that man was gone. In his place was the warlord of Graybridge, preparing to walk into a room he might not walk out of. Maya stood in the doorway of the bedroom, clutching the doorframe. She had heard him on the phone earlier, his voice low and lethal, giving instructions to Leo. She had heard the words endgame, neutral ground, and harbor line rooftop, and he was going to meet Victor. He was going to end it. Dante turned to face her. He adjusted his jacket, concealing the shoulder holster she knew was there. "Stay here," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were dark tunnels. "Leo has men at the elevator and in the lobby. Do not open the door for anyone but me." "You're going to the hotel," Maya said. It wasn't a question. I'm going to finish a conversation, Dante corrected. He walked over to her, stopping just outside the threshold. He looked like he wanted to touch her, to pull her into him, but he held back. He treated himself like a contagion, something that would infect her if he got too close before the violence was washed away. Victor will be there, she said, her voice trembling. It is a trap. Dante, it is always a trap. I know, he said softly. But if I do not spring it, he will keep coming. He will keep hunting you. I cannot live like that, Maya, and I will not let you live like that. He leaned in and pressed a brief, hard kiss to her forehead. It felt like a goodbye. Lock the door behind me, he ordered. Then he was gone. The heavy steel door clicked shut, leaving Maya alone in the silence. She stood there for a full minute, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She thought about staying. She thought about being the good, protected woman who waited by the window. But then she remembered the look in Victor's eyes in the parking garage. She remembered the way Dante had looked in the car, shaking with the fear of losing her. No, she whispered to the empty room. She was not a piece of furniture. She was not a passive prize to be won or lost. This was her life, her city, and the man she loved was walking into a trap set in her own workplace. She grabbed her coat. She didn't take the main elevator. She knew the building better than Dante's men did. She knew the service access code for the freight lift that the cleaning staff used. 20 minutes later, Maya was moving through the shadows of the Harbor Line Hotel. The hotel was officially closed for the night due to emergency maintenance, a lie Dante's holding company had spun to clear the building. The lobby was dark, draped in dust sheets like a graveyard. Maya took the stairs, 10 flights. By the time she reached the heavy metal door that led to the rooftop bar, her legs were burning and her lungs were screaming, but her fear for Dante drowned out the physical pain. She cracked the door open. The wind hit her first, howling off the ocean, carrying the scent of salt and approaching rain. The rooftop bar was a landscape of shadowed tables and folded umbrellas. The only light came from the city's skyline, casting long, skeletal shadows across the deck. Dante was there. He stood in the center of the open terrace, his coat blowing around his legs. He was flanked by only 2 men, Leo and another guard. He looked isolated, exposed. Across the terrace, near the VIP cabanas, stood Victor Dalka. Victor had brought 4 men. The odds were wrong. Maya bit her knuckle to keep from crying out. "You look tired, Daniel." Victor's voice carried over the wind, smooth and mocking. "Or should I call you Dante now? We're all friends here." "We were never friends, Victor," Dante replied. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the wind like a gavel strike. "You want the routes? You want the territory? Fine. We can discuss terms, but you stay away from the girl. That is the non-negotiable." Victor laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. He paced slowly to the left, his men mirroring his movement. "The girl. It is always about a girl with men like you. You get soft, you get sentimental, and that is when you lose." "I am not losing tonight," Dante said. "Dante, I am offering you a way out. Take the shipping lanes on the south side, leave the city center, leave the hotel, and we walk away." "You think I need your permission?" Victor sneered. "I already have the city center. I have eyes everywhere. Dante, did you really think you could hide her in the penthouse? Did you think I wouldn't know when you moved her?" Victor gestured to the shadows near the bar entrance. A figure stepped out. Maya froze. It was Mr. Henderson, the night manager. The little man who had yelled at her for fraternizing, who had bowed and scraped to Dante. He looked terrified, sweating despite the cold wind, but he was standing next to Victor. "Your staff is very loyal to the highest bidder," Victor said, placing a hand on Henderson's shoulder. "He's been very helpful, tracking your arrival times, logging your guest lists, telling us exactly when the little receptionist takes her breaks." Dante went rigid. The betrayal hung in the air, thick and poisonous. "You used a civilian," Dante said, his voice dropping to a terrifying growl. "I used a tool," Victor corrected. "And now, I'm going to use another one." Victor raised his hand. His men reached into their jackets. The negotiation was over. There was no deal. It was an execution. Dante saw it coming. He didn't reach for his weapon. He stepped forward, placing himself physically in front of Leo, making himself the primary target to draw fire away from his men. "Now!" Victor shouted. Maya didn't think. She didn't calculate the odds. She just saw the man on Victor's right pull a heavy, silenced pistol and aim it at Dante's chest. She burst through the access door. "Dante!" she screamed. The sound tore through the tension. Every head turned. Victor saw her first. A cruel, triumphant smile twisted his face. "Well, the guest of honor has arrived." "No!" Dante roared. The composure shattered. He wasn't the boss anymore. He was a desperate man watching his worst nightmare unfold. "Get back, Maya! Grab her!" Victor commanded his men. The gunman, who had been aiming at Dante, turned his weapon toward Maya. Maya didn't cower. She was fueled by a blind, protective rage. She grabbed a heavy, wrought iron decorative stand next to the door, a piece of the disposable decor she had cleaned 1,000 times. With a grunt of effort, she heaved it forward. It wasn't a graceful throw, but it was effective. The heavy iron base crashed into the gunman's shins just as he stepped forward. The man howled. Stumbling, his shot went wide, sparking harmlessly against the concrete floor. The distraction bought Dante exactly 1 second. It was all he needed. Dante launched himself across the gap. He didn't run away from the danger. He ran straight into the line of fire between Victor's men and Maya. "Down!" Dante shouted, crashing into Maya and driving her to the ground behind a concrete planter, just as the air erupted with the thwip-thwip of suppressed gunfire. Maya hit the deck hard, the wind knocked out of her. Dante was a heavy weight on top of her, shielding her entire body with his own. She felt him jerk sharply. Once. Twice. As if he had been punched by an invisible fist. "Dante!" she gasped, scrambling to look at him. He gritted his teeth, his face pale in the moonlight. "Stay down," he wheezed. Leo and the other guard were returning fire now, their shots precise and disciplined. Victor's men, disorganized by the sudden chaos and the injury to their lead shooter, were scrambling for cover. Sirens began to wail in the distance. Not one or two, but a chorus. Dante's backup. The real cavalry. "They are here!" Leo shouted over the wind. "Boss, the South team is breaching the stairs." Victor heard the sirens too. He looked at Dante, huddled over Maya, and then at the only exit that wasn't blocked. "This isn't over, Romano!" Victor screamed, backing toward the fire escape. "You can build your walls, but she will never be safe. I will always be waiting." Victor turned and vaulted over the low wall to the fire escape ladder, his remaining men following him into the dark. The rooftop fell silent, save for the wind and the approaching sirens. Dante slumped sideways, rolling off Maya. "Dante!" Maya scrambled up to her knees. He was lying on his back, staring up at the stormy sky. His breath was coming in shallow, wet rasps. His hand was pressed to his side, just above his hip. Dark, slick blood was seeping between his fingers, staining his pristine white shirt. "Oh my God!" Maya sobbed. She pressed her hands over his, trying to stem the flow. "Leo, help him!" Leo was there in an instant, dropping to his knees, ripping open a medical kit. "I am fine," Dante grit out, though his eyes were losing focus. "Maya, is she hurt?" "I am right here," Maya cried, leaning over him so he could see her face. "I am fine." "You stupid, stupid man. Why did you do that?" Dante looked up at her. His hand, slick with blood, reached up to touch her cheek. He smeared red across her skin, but neither of them cared. "I told you," he whispered, his voice weak but steady. "I would burn this city down before I let him touch you." "Do not talk," Maya ordered, tears spilling onto his face. "Just breathe. The paramedics are coming. Do you hear them? Just stay with me." "I am not going anywhere," Dante murmured. His eyes drifted shut, then snapped open as she squeezed his hand. "Look at me," she demanded, her voice breaking. "You do not get to leave me. Dante Romano, you dragged me into this life. You do not get to leave me alone in it." He managed a faint, ghostly smile. "I never wanted to drag you in." "Well, I am here," she sobbed. "I am here, and I am choosing you, so you have to stay." Leo pressed a compress against the wound, making Dante groan in pain. "Pressure is good, boss," Leo said, his own voice tight with worry. "Stay with the pain." The rooftop door burst open. Paramedics in high-visibility vests swarmed the deck, followed by uniformed police officers who seemed to know exactly who to ignore and who to help. As the medics pulled Dante onto a stretcher, his hand reached out, blindly grasping for Maya. She took it. She held on as they ran to the elevator. She held on as they loaded him into the ambulance. She held on until they forced her to sit on the bench seat while they worked on him. He watched her the whole time. Even as the pain dragged him under, his eyes remained fixed on her face, as if she were the anchor keeping him from drifting out to sea. 6 months later, the coffee shop on 4th Street smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon. It was raining again, a classic Graybridge drizzle that turned the pavement into a black mirror. Maya sat at a corner table, her laptop open. On the screen was a logo design for a new boutique opening in the city center. She tweaked the color balance, took a sip of her latte, and smiled. She didn't work at the Harbor Line anymore. She worked for herself now, freelancing for small businesses. It was terrifying, unpredictable, and financially unstable. But it was hers. The bell above the door chimed. Maya didn't look up immediately. She finished the keystroke. Then, she felt a presence beside the table, a warmth she knew better than her own heartbeat. "Is this seat taken?" a deep voice asked. Maya looked up. Dante stood there. He looked different. The darkness that used to cling to him like a second skin had lifted, just a fraction. He was still wearing a suit, but the tie was gone, the collar open. He looked healthier. The shadows under his eyes had faded. "That depends," Maya said, leaning back in her chair. "Are you a customer or a distraction?" "I am a distraction," Dante admitted. He sat down opposite her. He moved a little stiffly still. The scar on his side was a permanent reminder of the rooftop, but his strength had returned. "How was the meeting?" Maya asked. "Boring," Dante said. "Lawyers, contracts. We finalized the sale of the shipping warehouses today. It is done. The Romano family is officially out of the logistics business." "And into?" "Real estate," Dante said. "Development. Clean money, boring money." "Boring is good," Maya said softly. "Boring is safe." He agreed. He reached across the table and took her hand. His thumb rubbed over her knuckles, right where the charcoal smudge used to be. "Are you done for the day?" he asked. "I think so," she said, closing her laptop. "Good, because I owe you a dinner. And I think I remember promising to cook." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You? Cook? Last time you tried, we had to order pizza." "I have been practicing," he said with a grin that made her heart flip. "Come home, Maya." Home. She didn't live in the penthouse. She had insisted on that. She had her own apartment now, a small, bright place in a quiet neighborhood. Dante had helped her find it, and she knew Leo parked down the street every night, but the lease was in her name. The keys were in her pocket. "Okay," she said, "let's go home." The apartment was cozy, filled with the smell of garlic and tomatoes. Outside, the rain tapped against the window, but inside, the world was warm. Dante stood at the stove, stirring a pot of sauce. Maya was chopping basil next to him. The kitchen was narrow, forcing them to move around each other in a clumsy, intimate dance. As she reached for the salt, her hip bumped against his. Dante stopped stirring. He turned to her, trapping her gently between his body and the counter. "You are dangerous in the kitchen," he murmured. "I am helping?" She laughed, though the sound died in her throat as he leaned closer. "You are beautiful," he said. The playfulness vanished, replaced by that intense, soul-deep look that always made her feel stripped bare. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His hand lingered on her neck, his thumb tracing her pulse. "Are you happy?" he asked. The question was serious. "With this? With me?" Maya put the knife down. She rested her hands on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I am," she said. "It is not a normal life," he warned her, as he had 100 times before. "I'm trying to change it, but my name is still my name. There will always be risk." "I know," Maya said. "I'm not naive. Dante, I know who you are. I know what you have done." She looked up at him, her eyes clear and steady. "But I also know who you are trying to be," she continued. "I know the man who saved me in a parking garage. I know the man who took a bullet for me. Love does not mean we are safe, Dante. It just means we are not alone in the danger." Dante let out a breath, his forehead dropping to rest against hers. "I do not deserve you," he whispered. "Probably not," she teased softly. "But you are stuck with me." He laughed, a low rumble in his chest. He tilted her chin up, his eyes searching hers one last time, looking for any hesitation. He found none. He kissed her. It was slow and sure, tasting of red wine and promise. It wasn't the desperate, fearful kiss of the rooftop. It was a kiss of belonging. It was the seal on a contract they had written in blood and rain. Maya wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, melting into the solid warmth of him. Outside. The city of Graybridge continued its cold, violent churn, but in here, in this small kitchen, they had carved out a space of their own. She wouldn't pretend his hands were clean. He wouldn't pretend she was just a pretty thing to be kept on a shelf. They were two flawed, fierce people who had found each other in the storm. And as Dante pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, Maya knew that whatever came next, whatever shadows tried to creep back in, they would face it together. And that was enough. Thank you so much for reading the final part of If You Tease Me Again with That Look, Mafia Boss Warned. It has been a journey bringing Maya and Dante's story to life, from the rainy hotel lobby to this quiet moment of peace. I would love to hear your thoughts on the ending. Did Dante redeem himself in your eyes? And where are you tuning in from today? Please leave a comment below sharing your location and your favorite moment from the story. If you enjoyed this series, please make sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories so you do not miss our next adventure. We have many more passionate, dangerous, and romantic tales waiting for you. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next story.